Hey folks, today we're going to be reading the most gruesome confessions on Reddit. Let's begin. What is the creepiest confession or most disturbing that you have heard from an otherwise normal person? One Redditor commented, "This is the Matryoshka Dollar Confessions. My grandmother confided in me that her husband, my grandpa who died the year I was born, told her about his most worrisome night in the armed forces. He and she were stationed in the USAF near Las Vegas, when one night one of his crew members, a direct report, knocked loudly and anxiously at their door. It was the middle of the night and the man was frantically begging my grandpa to come help him because he really messed up this time. He dressed, kissed my grandma goodbye, and went outside with his airman to talk. He was a wreck, pacing back and forth, crying. My grandpa tried to comfort him. 'Son, I can't help if I don't know what's wrong,' she recalls him saying. The airman suggests a drive. They drive out into the desert with my grandpa getting more and more concerned as the story unwraps. Turns out the airman's fiancée had left him. She wasn't cut out for the life, and he was so upset about losing her that they'd got into a fight and he'd left her in the desert. He needed help making it right. It would kill him if his folks knew he'd laid hands on a woman. My grandpa hears his confession, tries to comfort him, and tells him to drive him to her, that they'd fix it. He should face his punishment, but it would all be okay. The airman is relieved and he begins thanking his boss and crying in appreciation as they drive deeper in the desert and then pull off the road. It's dark out, and he can't see much, but Grandpa says, "Okay, where is she?" His airman leads him over to a big, low cactus, a ways from the road, and says, "Here she is. Lying in the sand is the fiancée, choked to death." His worst nightmares revealed. All his hopes are dashed about getting a hurt woman to the hospital. He tries to show no worry or concern or emotion, just to be reassuring. He's over an hour outside of town with a murderer. The airman wants to bury her and can't stop talking. How deep? Should they move her? How long will it take the animals to find her? If only she didn't try to leave, he wouldn't need shovels. My grandpa stood in the middle of the desert with a raving murderer and buried a body in the sand, while he reassured her killer that they'd somehow make it okay with the authorities. They then drove back into town and stopped off at a diner, where my grandpa has to call for the military police to come arrest the airman. Grandpa doesn't return for a day or two, assisting the cops in finding the body while worrying my grandma sick. She said that night changed him, that he carried that shovel for life. One commented, "I used to help out at a nursing home. This old Russian lady would relate the same tale over and over. Her husband drank and hit her. It was sad for sure, but one day she leaned over and whispered, 'He was a-hole drunk, so I pushed him downstairs, dead.'" Another commented, "A friend had told me for years about the dark secret in his past that he can't tell anybody. Eventually, he felt comfortable enough to confess, and he really was not exaggerating. When he was young, he raped his younger sister. The family knew about it and they all got counseling and stuff at the time. He and his sister are friends now, but F." Another Redditor commented, "Unfortunately, this is about me. I told a friend and they were pretty creeped out about it, and I'm quite embarrassed of it really. I've never done it again and it's really changed the way I talk to people online. My Reddit account has some very easy to follow steps to find out who I am, so I only post positive things. Very tame critiques, and that's about it. My account has my name that I share with a lot of other things, previous online accounts, etc. But my story is about how I cyberstalked a Battlefield 3 hacker just because he was being annoying. When Battlefield 3 became free-to-play, I joined a team deathmatch server. I have quite a few hours on Battlefield 3, 300 plus, and I really enjoyed it. To see a full server again was quite fun, and I was kicking butt. Then this guy joins. This guy starts kicking butt, headshotting me from across the map. I don't think too much of it, but I ask, "Hey man, is that all skill?" He responds, "It is," and he's screaming. Battlefield 3 isn't a very popular game, so it took less than a minute to find his Twitch stream. Just look for a picture of the same map being played and his was the first. Clearly hacking. Boxes on screen, snapping headshots, the whole 9 yards. So now I had his stream. I called it out in-game, linked the stream, and he left. Was booted a minute later. And that minute he was joking about how, as the game was free, he could just get another account and keep going. On his stream, he wasn't talking, but he was typing. He was typing to another streamer. Now his stream just had me as a viewer. I was pretty bored and he had my attention. He hadn't really ruined my gaming experience. It was just, who is this douche? His Twitch name matched his Twitter name, which he used to promote his stream. His Twitter feed was filled with bully and trolling posts at people, and he was just a smarmy douchebag. No photos though. His name was included, but it wasn't a very unique name. Now I have a Twitter account and a name. This is where it gets even worse. I start to trawl his posts. Going back months, I find a post that links him to a town. I Google search the town and his name. Bingo. A post about Australia Day and how he thought his town had put on a really bad show, just saying how bad it was, etc., etc., and trawling people in the comments. It was a small town and the people were biting. You should organize it if you think you're so great, etc. He was eating it up. But I had his Facebook. Started looking into his profile. Posts were private, but a Facebook URL closely matched the Twitter, so I knew it was him. The profile pics were nondescript, banned pages, random crap like that, but this guy had a girlfriend. Her profile was public and she kept tagging him in posts. It was so cringy. I love you, boo, you are my world, the most beautiful girl I know, etc., etc. The guy and his girlfriend were two ham planets. He was the epitome of a keyboard warrior. He had a fedora wearing lens flare edited profile picture. It was actually just perfect. It was just so satisfying that this guy was the stereotype personified. I could have left it there, but I had to go a step further. I created another Twitch account just to let the guy know I found him. I posted his Facebook details in the chat of Twitch. There was like max 4 people watching him stream. You could see it pop up on his stream chat. Him pause mid-game and just not do anything for like 5 seconds. He closed the stream. What's the most effed up thing someone has confessed to you in confidence? One Redditor commented, I used to have a friend, Lyra, who told me the messed up reason why she got breast implants. She had a crush on her husband's ex-girlfriend fiancé, I know, complicated, that she worked with. She had been flirting with him and texting him a lot to get close to him. He confided in her that his fiancé was getting a double mastectomy because she had a breast cancer. She went out and got implants in order to give him what his fiancé couldn't give him, breasts. As soon as she healed, she was sending nude photos, and when his fiancé was out of town, she took over wine, got him drunk, and tried to get pregnant with him that night. She already has 2 baby traps from high school. When she woke up, he had her take Plan B and said he didn't want to see her again. He had to go to work and ask her to lock up when she left. She then dug the Plan B out of the trash and placed it on the counter, because it was the Christian thing to do to let her know what her fiancé had been doing. His fiancé found the Plan B on the counter and broke up with him. She called Lyra's husband and he decided to stay because he loved Lyra's kids and told her they were the only reason he was staying because she couldn't provide a stable life for them without him. Lyra then spent the next 2 years stalking her crush by driving by his house multiple times a week, showing up at places he frequents by accident. Lyra's husband keeps all their accounts separate, won't put her name on the deed to the house, etc. He also required her to show paper proof that she had an intrauterine device inserted. I am pretty sure he plans to divorce her in a few years when the youngest turns 18. Another commented, Remote fishing lodge. I'm working there for like a week in the kitchen. Me and this other dude are closing every night. This leads to us having a few beers after work every night, which leads to, first, he tells me it's his birthday and that he hasn't told anybody except me. I felt so bad for him that. He says he's got nobody who cares about him. I hang out with him, give him a happy birthday handshake, and whatever. As the nights go on, he starts telling me how he thinks everyone else is dumb and there needs to be a culling. He's not getting along with the chef. He actually was fine, he just didn't like being told what to do. At one point he says something like tyrants need to die. Chef, for example, he's a tyrant. I'm like, dude, that's school shooter talk. It's not up to you or anyone to decide who's too dumb to live. Just do your own thing. One night, he asks something like, "How young is too young for you?" referring to sex and dating. I'm like, well, 18 is the legal age, but I'm personally not into anyone too much younger than me regardless. He goes into his perspectives on how women are impregnable around 12 or 13, so for him that's okay for sex, and the younger the better. I'm like, dude, you're lucky I'm not a judgmental person because 99% of people would probably punch you in the face for talking like that. Don't ever say that to anybody again. Another night he starts talking about killing people. I keep trying to talk sense into him patiently. As we're parting ways for the night, he goes, "There will be blood, mark my words." Now, I don't know if he meant it in a vague, general metaphorical way, but I just couldn't tolerate it anymore. I spoke with a chef who brought in 2 HR people to whom I repeated the above story. Next morning, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrived in a float plane, like I said, remote location, and took the kid away. I wish him well. Another Redditor commented, "I once dated a girl who had a reputation for being easy. I liked her, so I didn't really mind, but I was young, innocent, and naive in so many ways. I stipulated to her that I wouldn't have sex with her until we'd been dating for a year. She took that as a personal challenge. 3 days before the year was up, she gave up and dumped me. 2 days later, I'm hanging out at my friend's house and grabbed a glass of tea from the fridge. It tasted funny, but I was thirsty, so I didn't really care. It wasn't half bad after like the 3rd or 4th sip. After the 2nd glass, I started to feel dizzy. My friend told me to go lie down in his room. He walked me there because the room was spinning. I lay down and he closed the door behind me as he left. Without missing a beat, my ex comes out of the closet and climbs in bed, takes her shirt off, and nothing. I blacked out. Woke up the next morning feeling dehydrated but otherwise okay. Also woke up missing my pants. She was missing plenty more. I got the idea. At the time, I was upset but not overly so. She had taken my virginity that night, and while it wasn't the amazing, special, magical experience that I was expecting, it didn't happen with a pretty girl, so who was I to complain? My views on sex certainly changed after that. We remained broken up. Apparently, she did it to rub my nose in the fact that we had sex before the year was up and she won. 5 years later, I was married to my high school sweetheart, sort of. She had just left me due to being emotionally unavailable. My friend was crashing on my couch with her fiancé for a few days, 3 weeks actually, while her guy was napping in my bedroom. I was hanging out on the couch and she drops a bomb on me. Turns out we never actually did anything all those years ago. She was going to, but she was drunk too and ended up passing out before doing anything significant, which explains why she threw up all over me the next morning. She just let me believe it because she liked the idea that she got one over on me and got me to break my promise not to sleep with her or some such nonsense. Only response I had for her was, "Get out." To this day, I still wonder what my life might have been like had she not lied to me or, done it at all. I never did regain that idea that sex meant anything other than just something to do for fun. Another Redditor commented, "My husband and I like to go to Hooters because it's right on the river and it has good food and beer at cheap prices. I like women, but I find Hooters outfits unattractive," adding this for context. One night we were there for 3+ hours watching a game outside and drinking pitchers and wings with another couple. The same gal serves us all night and she is delightful, just a sweet girl, great service, etc. Finally, the other couple leaves, we stick around for another beer, and the server brings us our check. Before we sign and leave, she asks us abruptly if she can take a pic of us. Apparently, she stayed a half hour over and her boyfriend is steaming mad and thinks she's with some dude. She thinks a pic including me, a woman, will prove she's not cheating. I'm drunkish and tell her that's effed up, that sure she can have the pic, but the guy is an a-hole. I was being sarcastic, but I also do think this is an a-hole request from her boyfriend. My husband made a comment or two as well. This girl suddenly just lost it, spilled all this stuff about how he has a tracker on her phone, details about emotional and physical abuse, even how he threatens to R-word her due to things like taking extra shifts at Hooters or anything that put her around other men, like going to the beach in a bikini. After what felt like a while, she stopped talking, apologized, dropped the check, and walked away. I've heard worse stories, I truly have. but the way this girl just split down the middle and started yelping and spilling this info to perfect strangers, it was one of the first times I've seen someone just lose it and actively melt down. I saw this poor girl's armor fall away for about 3 minutes, and it was so awful. We signed the check, tipped very well, and I think I left my number. I don't know. I probably didn't because it freaked me out. I wished I'd done more. I hope she got out. I think about her at least once a week and hope this. Another Redditor commented, "Years ago when I, female, was about 27, worked at an old man pub part-time while at uni. I would sometimes have a drink with a couple of my favorite regulars. We called him Steven, 50-ish, and Colin, 47, after my shift. Male partner at the time was best friend with Steven's nephew Peter, 27. Peter's mom had unfortunately passed away about 7 years previously. Peter was very sensitive about the subject and he held his mom on a pedestal. This backstory is essential for context. So one night I was having a few drinks with Colin and Steven. Steven was particularly drunk. We were talking about Peter and how he was doing great with his business, and the convo proceeds into the death of Peter's mom. All of a sudden, Steven proceeds to tell me how he has been having an affair with Peter's mom, his brother's wife, for years before she died, and Peter potentially was his child, not his brother's. I had really bad anxiety back then, as I was quite socially awkward. My golly god, anytime I was around Peter, my anxiety troubled, and I became even awkward to the point of he came over, I would say hi, make him a cuppa, then go to my bedroom. Our friend group would drink together regularly. I was okay then because I was drunk, but sober was a nightmare. Knowing something that heavy about someone and knowing if they ever found out it would destroy not only him, but the memory of his mom is awful. Steven has never mentioned it again, neither did to him. I don't even know he remembers telling. I wish I ever knew that. I wish Steven didn't tell me. I split up my partner, so I don't see Peter anymore, but I hope he never finds out purely because it could destroy his mom's memory. Some goddamn heavy crap. I only wanted a couple of pints. Edit, accidentally posted it without finishing this story. Another commented, "In the 70s, me, 15 male, and my girlfriend, 15 female, were very close. Adventurous, no boundaries, eager to try and do everything naive kids do when exploring relationships. We became closer after our 16th birthdays, a present to each other, if you will. We attended a co-ed boarding school, so we're together all the time, sneaking out at night to each other's dorms. An exciting time for us. One afternoon, she casually told me about her uncle who she visited during holidays and had for years. She was an only child being adopted into the family. My dearest friend explained how her uncle was the only one who really loved her, and she felt that I was as loving as the uncle, so I was someone special to her as well, as she was to me. They had discussed intercourse, but the uncle wanted her to lose her virginity to someone her age. The uncle passed away the same year. We went our separate ways after school but stayed in touch. She became pregnant and was sent away to have the baby boy, who was adopted out immediately. She thought nothing of it. She had a tumultuous life as a young adult where nobody understood her bad mood swings and things would regularly go to custard around her. In the late 80s, she died in a car crash trying to overtake a bus. As I've aged and become wiser, I now recognize the behaviors she had were of a groomed young girl by her pedophile uncle. She identified affection and interest in her as some sort of physical thing which triggered an enthusiasm for physical contact. Possibly bipolar, I seemed to be a rare stabilizing presence, and her parents always greeted me warmly. Her life was wasted from the greed of a pedophile. After 50 years, I still wonder if things could have been better for her." Another Redditor commented, "I live in California, and in 2016 and 2017, I used to take Ubers all the time to buy weed from one of the dispensaries before they had the completely legal ones, and people tell you some crazy things when A, they know they'll never encounter you again, and B, they find out you don't mind towing the legal line using loopholes to get an otherwise illegal thing. I would normally set the ride up to be there and then back to my apartment, and most of the time as soon as I got in the car, I'd tell them where we're going just in case they weren't comfortable giving me a ride after. None of them ever had an issue with it. I had a lot of old guys that would start talking about how they used to smoke a lot back in the day and bring up other minor illicit activities of theirs. There was this one guy in particular, though. He was an older guy who, on the way back to my apartment, he asks if he can smell what I got. I hand him the capsule of weed I just bought. He opens it and takes a big whiff. He starts reminiscing out loud to me, but not just about weed, about cocaine, how he used to sell it. He brings up something I felt he should have kept to himself. He tells me and a buddy of his were set to meet someone to either buy or sell some coke to. They arrive at the motel with their half and head to the room. He says upon entering the room, the guy they're supposed to meet with is there already. He's dead, apparently still with his half of the train in the room with him, so my Uber driver and his friend decide to leave with both halves, their own and the dead guy's. They never heard anything about it after. Now, I had so many questions like how did this guy they were there to meet with seem to have died? Was this someone they dealt with before? Just how large of a deal was this? And why the F are you telling me? My only conclusion is that the story was either completely made up by him on the spot, or this guy had just had this on his conscience for so long, building up, that he felt the need to get it out to someone. Someone he felt he'd never see again and was at least just barely, even if only a sliver, a part of that underworld. Another one added, not sure what the time limit is before it's considered necroing a thread, so please pardon my intrusion, but I was in a weird platonic situationship with a guy, B, who I met on Grindr about 8 years ago. We became quick friends. I quickly learned about all of B's trauma. Eventually, he also showed me how emotionally unstable he was, so I quietly cut him out of my life. B told me several things with a straight face that would make people go, what the actual F? He was kicked out of his home by his mom in his teens. He lived with his grandfather for a while, but ultimately was kicked out by his step-grandmother when his grandfather developed dementia. He couch-surfed for a while going to his local community college. He was mentored by one of his math teachers who he described as the kindest, sweetest, and generous woman he ever met. She encouraged him to major in mathematics and helped him build up his GPA and even wrote him letters of recommendation. She also allowed him to stay at her place with her husband while he finished up his other classes. Well, B did just that and then saw the husband was on Grindr. Rather than steering clear and blocking or telling the husband off, B told me they secretly hooked up several times while B's mentor wasn't home. He didn't even ask to confirm whether they had an open relationship or not. B didn't seem to have any remorse about it either. He giggled about it when he was telling me. Eventually, he transferred to a UC but dropped out due to his mental health and found another older man to mooch off of. B took care of this guy's elderly mom while doing an online BS program. He told me this while he was writing graduation announcements for his BS. His mentor reached out to him to congratulate him and gave him a cash present. Didn't sit right with me. He totally had me wrapped around his finger, but I'm glad I cut him out for good. Other shady effed up things about B. Was accused of molesting his cousin, nearly choked out an older man while taking care of people with dementia. Told an older Native American woman he was taking care of that whenever he was pissed at her, he'd give her a special blanket, insinuating a smallpox blanket. Hooked up with a pedophile and continued to do so even after finding out. Told me he really found the emaciated look of advanced HIV and AIDS to be hot. What is the most disturbing deathbed confession you've ever heard? One Redditor commented, it's nowhere near the level of what some of these are, but growing up, my mom and grandmother had always been strange. They had an arm's length relationship, and the only times we visited were generally a disaster. But to her credit, my mom tried and wanted me to have a grandmom, and the memories that came with it. She tried her best, but something was very off. Small details trickled out over the years, but they were vague. When it was time for my grandmother to die, I remember on her deathbed, I visited. My mom did not, and my grandmother told me right before she passed, tell your mom I always really loved her despite everything. That was a strange thing for her to say, because why would that have been something she needed to say? I didn't tell my mom right away because after my grandmother died, she was oddly emotionless, and I felt like it was not something my mom needed to hear just then. A few years later, the truth came out when we were talking over the phone. My mom told me that when she was 5, my grandmother tried to run her over with a car because she found out her affair partner was molesting my mom. She wanted to get rid of her. It didn't work because the neighbors saw and intervened. So my mom ended up getting sent overseas to her father's mom's home to be safe while that got dealt with and my grandparents got divorced. Times being what they were, however, when my mom returned, her mother got custody of her. It ended up with my mother running away, being homeless, getting pregnant very young by a much older man, a secret sister I never knew about, and I was pretty floored. When she told me, I figured that it made a little more sense why my grandmother had said that, so I shared that with my mom finally. She just said, well, she had a strange way of showing it, and that was that. One Redditor added, "Oh man, I finally have a story. I worked as an MRI tech aide in college, and my job was simply to bring people to and from their hospital room for an MRI. One day, I was asked to get this nice, elderly, big Italian man. He was a big human, think 6'4", 260. I would have had placed him in his early 70s, and he sadly had early onset dementia. We had short but nice chats on the way to and from the MRI. On the way back to his room, he told me how he was the guy called when his buddies needed to take care of business. I believe my naive response was something along the lines of, "Oh, what kind of business were your buddies in?" All kinds, but they would call him when they needed to take care of a guy. So that's when it hit me what he was saying. I chuckled to myself, attributed it to the dementia as we got back to his room. When we got back to his room, his 3 kids and spouses, ranging 40 to 50-ish, were all there waiting on him. You could tell they were saddened by the condition of their father, but nevertheless were kind and smiled at me as I began getting him hooked back up to his O2 and heart monitors. One of his daughters asked me how he's been. The gentleman said he was feeling okay and had just gotten back from getting an MRI with me. It was that moment that he said to his family, very nonchalantly, "Yeah, I was just telling this young man how I used to take care of business back in the day." It was at that moment all 6 faces turned somber in unison and turned and looked at me in unison. Well, yes, what a great story. Well, have a nice day, everyone," in the most cheerful voice I could muster. Never mentioned a word, don't even remember the gentleman's name. Probably for the best. One Redditor commented, "My former neighbor, who was a stay-at-home dad with 3 boys who had all had various disabilities, used to be the super dad us kids all wanted. He was a gamer and loved to collect cards and was the cool dad who liked wrestling and other cool stuff that 90s people liked. His kids were the only ones who were nice to my brother who struggled to make friends due to his behavioral problems, so we all basically gathered at their house and played games, usually GoldenEye 64 and traded cards. They all moved away and we were heartbroken, but my parents would take us over there on occasion to visit for the day, and most of the day was spent in the pool being tossed around or playing wrestling games on the PS2. Due to distance, we eventually stopped talking, but I ran into the dad around age 17 or so, and he finally got around to working again and losing weight due to health, etc. He added me and my brother on Facebook, and we would talk games and such. Well, apparently he had lost weight due to his health failing, but it was too late and decided to tell me that he had very bad thoughts about me as a child. He said he knew they were wrong, but he had to clear his conscience. Suddenly, this dad who used to teach us wrestling moves and throw us in the pool and play chicken in the pool was a pedo, and all of the innocent times became disgusting memories. From what I remember, he never touched me inappropriately, but I found myself doubting my memory, and now even in times where he simply picked me up and tossed me in the pool became sexual and disgusting in my head because he confessed to having those thoughts. Worst part of all, when I told my brother his confessions, my brother replied saying, "I'm not surprised. He was always a kid in his mind, so it's not shocking he saw you that way when you were a kid." Like what? The guy passed away a month or 2 later, but I'll never forget how he ruined years of great childhood memories by confessing his pedo desires to me and forced me to carry that the rest of my life while he's 6 feet under.